Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible to all.
Yes, Anisha.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to the next session of the workshop on research paper writing and methodology in social science, organized by Jadavpur University, JIR, and the School of International Relations and Strategic Studies. As you can see, today's topic is Journey Through the Bibliographical Maze, Creating a Perfect Bibliography. And our speaker for the day is Deeplina Banerjee. She is a PhD scholar in the Department of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies at Western University. Her research focuses on the issues of gender, international development, and policy studies. She is also a research analyst with Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, where she researches ESG issues pertaining to South Asia. Uh, Diplinadi, I would request you to kindly take up from here.
Thank you so much, Anisha. Hi, everyone. Please feel free to call me Deeplina. No formalities here. I'm sure, like I am one of, your fellow researchers. I'm very excited to be here today. But I would like to begin by thanking the organizers for thinking about me and for allowing me the opportunity to come here to talk to every one of you and to share whatever 2 cents I have on creating a bibliography or kind of preparing a bibliography that might help you in your research pursuits. I do not claim that I will be able to kind of, take you through the process of writing a perfect bibliography. That thing usually takes time. It took me years to get it right, and I don't think I'm still perfect with that. But I'm sure with today's session, you'll get some idea about curating a bibliography nonetheless. Um, I would also like to thank all of you that you took out time on a Saturday evening to meet me and to come listen to me at 8 p.m. I believe it's 8 p.m. In India, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Oh, please do not call me ma'am. Please call me Deeplina. Like, just call me Deeplina. And yeah, I hope all of you are having a great evening, and I think we can begin. Just a couple of things. If you have any question, feel free to send them my way. But I guess it's better that we wait until the end of the session so that together we can go through the questions. If any question that you have, if any suggestion, feedback, whatever thoughts that you might be having, and what else? Yeah, I mean, just bear with me. This is my first time presenting on Google Meet. So if there are any issues, I'm sure both Abindriyon and Anisha can walk us through that. And yeah, I guess we can begin. So the presentation of my title is The What, Why, and How of Writing a Bibliography. Now, to preface my discussion, it's going to be a pretty dry discussion, so I'm going to keep it as interesting as possible. And the first thing, I myself, I'm a PhD candidate. So the first thing that I started asking myself when I was writing my research paper during my doctoral coursework in Western at Canada was like, how do I create a bibliography? Because prior to that, I did not have as much experience about writing a research paper, doing proper research or even citing my sources. So these were the three questions that I found myself asking. And honestly, my professors back at Western thought that I came prepared with knowing how to prepare and write a bibliography. So it was a steep learning curve, but I was able to kind of get through it. So I'm happy to walk you through the process that helped me out. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So what is a bibliography? Is there anybody who would like to share their 2 cents here, apart from what is presented in the slide? Anyone? Feel free to jump in. All right, I guess that's a no, but that's okay. We can get to know more about it. So bibliography is essentially a list of curative sources that you have consulted and cited while preparing your research paper. I'm sure, like in the previous discussions that you've had in this workshop, you've learned the ways of identifying a research topic, preparing a research paper, and you must be knowing, I'm sure all of you know, that in order to write a research paper, you need to have a set of source that you can consult. Now, when you are consulting a set of academic, non academic practitioner sources, you have to credit the creator of the idea. So bibliography is essentially a source of those collection of academic papers, journals, articles, book chapters, whatever that may be, or practitioner reports, blog posts that will appear at the end of your research work, and it provides a holistic, comprehensive information about the author's name, which includes their first and last name, the journal that the research was published in, the page numbers, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing is, and this is something that I used to get confused with, was I used to um, often use bibliography, reference, and work cited interchangeably. Those are three different things, and that depends on the nature of your project and the citation style that you are going to use. But to put it in very plain language, work cited is generally, again, it appears at the end of your research, and it usually consists of the sources that you are directly citing, not the ones that you are consulting, the ones that you are directly citing in your paper. Whereas in bibliography, you will also include the works that you have consulted and not necessarily directly cited in your research. Can I have the next slide, please? So the question is, but why do we need a bibliography? I mean, it's as if just writing a research paper was not difficult in itself, that we have to prepare a bibliography which sometimes runs for more than 5+ pages. The issue is, if you are using somebody else's research that they have already worked on, you need to cite them. And this is something that I learned during my coursework at Western. When I was a master's student, I did not have a lot of idea about writing a research paper. And in all honesty, I will admit that when I was a master's student in India, the way I was writing a term paper or a research paper was just compiling ideas from different sources. I did not necessarily know how to develop an argument. I did not necessarily know how to draw a hypothesis or a working thesis out of it. Because in my mind, interchangeably, I would use thesis with the document, or with this, big compilation of ideas and information that you present at your at your defense, maybe during a master's or a PhD. That was my idea of a thesis. So I never really knew that thesis actually is a hypothesis, an idea that you work with, that you investigate in whatever research project that you're undertaking. That could be a PhD research, that could be a master's research, that could be an independent research project, or maybe even a research article or book chapter that you're writing. So when I was doing my doctoral coursework in Western, and might I add, it was a steep learning curve. I knew nothing about research, and I was starting a PhD program in a completely unknown environment. Sure, my professors were supportive, but they already had a preconceived notion that I had basic understanding of research methods, which I'm terribly ashamed to admit that at that point I did not. Something that came up a lot when I was, when I was a teaching assistant for some of the professors in the department, is that they had, so just to give you a brief context, that our courses in Western, they usually, and it's sort of the same all over North America, usually the courses run either for 1 year if it's a full course, or it would run for 4 months on specific terms. So we have three terms basically: fall, winter, and summer. So basically, if somebody is teaching a course on fall, that course would run for 12 to 13 weeks, and throughout those 4 months from September until December. So every student would get a syllabus, and those syllabus had the kind of resources that we would be dealing with, along with the kind of projects and other expectations that the instructor had from the students. And one thing that was very, very, very clear on the syllabus was academic integrity. So in in Western, and I'm sure in other universities, usually when you are writing a research paper or term paper, you submit it through an online portal that then goes through a plagiarism checker, which is usually called Turnitin, and that helps us understand as teaching assistants or instructors when we are grading exams whether the student have adequately cited and properly cited the sources that they have consulted. Now, it may happen, and honestly, there have been instances where I had to sit with students one on one, and these are fresh out of high school, um, where they probably, much like me, did not have a lot of idea or knowledge about referencing or citing something. So most of the times I would get exams that had 50%, kind of, that would appear to be 50% of the plagiarism checker. Um, and what happened during those times was it often became very evident that these students did not really know how to use a bibliography or how to properly cite the sources. So I think instead of shaming somebody for not knowing certain things, there is something that we can do to help them access the kind of knowledge that they did not have access to earlier. So, compassion, understanding, and also having a collaborative approach with the student, with the person that you're working with, is really important to maintain academic integrity, as also to ensure that the person who is writing a research paper or who is new to writing a research paper knows the basics of it. Because again, it's a constantly learn it's a continuous learning process. I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly evolving, and hey, I fail all the time. Like, there are times when I check my bibliography and I miss out on certain information, and that's part of the process. So again, to just preface this, if you do not know how to prepare the perfect bibliography, that's okay. I doubt a lot of us know. So I think the art or the trick is to know that you are originally crediting the source that you're drawing your ideas from. So that counts for academic integrity. Can I have the next slide, please? Oh, yeah. So the question is, now we come to the how of creating a bibliography. Uh, it is a tedious process, but I assure you, there are ways to it if you just follow, these things that appear on your screen. A well-constructed bibliography, as the slide says, has the name of the author, the individual name of the authors that includes their first or last name, the title of the work that you're referring to. For example, it could be a book chapter. So if that is a book chapter, you would first begin with the chapter of the book, and then you would make sure to also add the book that where the chapter is in, the publication date or whatever source you're working with, the publisher. The more, and this is something that I have found while working with the practitioner data or practitioner sources, is sometimes they do not have a journal publisher, right? They appear on websites or blog posts. So in that case, make sure that you're using, for instance, suppose you're working with a report that has appeared on the website of Human Rights Watch. So once you have, included the name of the author, the title, the publication date, publisher, publication place. If you do not know of that, that's also fine. Sometimes we do not have access to that kind of information, but make sure that you are kind of integrating and including the source of the publication, where it was published. If it was not a journal, if it was not a book, if it was not a book, then do mention the website that you found the report or the blog post on. Yeah, and then mention the page number, the URL for online sources. Like I mentioned, if it appeared on uh, the uh, the website of, say, Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch or Forbes or whatever, just make sure that you also include the URL for that source. And again, this goes for journals or books. If you're able to include the DOI, which is the digital object identifier for scholarly articles, that is absolutely encouraged, and you should make sure wherever you can find, whenever you can, to include the DOI. Now, another thing that is important to note, that different bibliographies depend on different citation styles. So no citation style has the similar kind or the similar technique to a bibliography. If you're writing in APA style, if you're writing in Chicago, if you're writing in MLA, whatever kind of rolls your boat, make sure that you are adhering to the styles, and also make sure to read what is expected, or what kind of citation is expected of you if you're submitting an article to a journal, or if you're writing for a book project. If you're contributing a book chapter for a project, make sure that you are absolutely clear on what kind of citation style uh, that you are required to adhere to. Can I have the next slide, please? I'm coming to that, Sharon. Yeah. So, what are the different kinds of bibliography? Oh, I see a typo. Well, if you are anything like me, you would see that once you have sent your email, no matter how much you have proofread it, you will find a typo. So, try not to be like me. Proofread your work through and through, so that when you are officially presenting, you do not end up with a typo. Anyway, but I hope you'll be able to oversee this. And yeah, so again, there are different kinds of bibliography, and it again depends on the citation style and the nature of your project. Can I have the next slide, please? So when I say that bibliographies depend on different styles, I mean that, think of it as, suppose you're kind of attending a formal interview, and you've been asked certain question that determines whether or not you will get role with that particular company or job provider. You have to get them right. There's no two way to say, there's no easy way out. You have to get these things right, because these ties to um, your capability as a scholar, and also this establishes the integrity of your work. And this does not give out the idea that, oh, you're just kind of doing the research without being aware of the research process. So there are different kinds of bibliography. I already mentioned about works cited. It is usually used in the MLA style. That includes all the sources, much like references that you cited in your paper. References, it's essentially the same thing, just the names are different, but also, the way you create your citations will also be different. But again, references are mostly used in APA style. This will include the sources you cited in your paper, but sometimes it might also include the sources that you consulted but did not directly cite. Um, One thing that I cannot emphasize enough is usually I like to work with APA style, but that's not the, role of all the journals that usually prefer Chicago. I find it very, very difficult to work with Chicago. I absolutely abhor it. But make sure that you know where whichever journal or whichever, book organizer or project you're working with, project lead you're working with, you are absolutely clear on the citation style that they want. And the Chicago style, like I was mentioning, which is someday going to be the death of me, is when you include footnotes or endnotes in your text to provide additional information or citation for specific points. Usually you use footnotes when you have to explain. Suppose I'm using a statement on, so my research to kind of give you a brief context is how Canada is addressing the Rohingya crisis. So essentially, I'm working to understand the policies that the Canadian government so far has developed in order to support the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, and I propose policy recommendations. So, for example, if I'm preparing a policy brief for the government of Canada, I obviously have to work in a very, very, very limited space. One, because not a lot of people have time, and usually people in the government, they do not have time to score through 50-page journal articles. So, what you do is present 4-page brief, concise policy brief. Now, I do not have a lot of space to communicate all of my ideas. So, what I will do is if I'm following the Chicago style, if I'm using a particular statement and if I think that I cannot explain everything to it, I would use a footnote and explain why that statement is relevant or why should the government consider the policy recommendation that I am making on the basis of my research. So basically, Chicago citations also have endnotes that is a compilation of the sources that you have cited, and it can also sometimes at the end of your document, you could also include a bibliography section where you can use the sources that you have either cited or consulted, and that could use both primary and secondary sources. Can I have the next slide, please? Just to kind of understand that all of you can hear me clearly, right? There's no echo or nothing. If I could get a hands up or a thumbs up, that's fine. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate all of you. Yeah, sorry, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Honestly, I'll be very honest. Research methods have been something that I struggle to find interesting. It's sort of a due diligence, like you have to get them right. Just like if you're attending a formal interview and if you really want that job, oh my God, I have to get these answers to these questions right, and it cannot go wrong. So it's even if I find some of the questions or some of the content right, it's important to kind of know about it. So I just tried to kind of make this presentation a little quirky so that it's easily attainable for people like yourself who are taking their time out on a Saturday evening just to listen to another PhD candidate. I appreciate all of you. I just again add that. So thank you for being here. And yeah, what are the different kinds of bibliography? And I've tried to be a little philosophical here to ask whether we are getting into the deeper things or getting deeper into things. Can you all make the difference out? I don't know. I just wanted to make the presentation more interesting and not so formal. So yeah, I think we can move to the next slide. So this style is my absolute favorite whenever I'm writing a research paper. Now, I will let you on in a little secret whenever, and this was during my doctoral coursework, Again, when I had zero idea about how to do research. And just know, don't beat yourself up if you do not know certain things, because research, it's a continuous learning process. You learn the trick of the trade as you evolve, as you advance in your career, right? So when I was doing my doctoral coursework, when I was writing actual research papers, which included citations, hypotheses, and whatnot, I was struggling. One, because all I knew was, okay, if I'm reading something, I'm compiling different information together, and that's that, right? I don't know how to kind of tease out the argument. I do not know how to build a hypothesis. So, something that I learned while teaching for a first year intro course was how to prepare an annotated bibliography. And mind you, I was teaching assistant. So I was supposed to know the trick of the trade. But there was a particular assignment that where students had to, and these were all first year students, right? Fresh undergrads, fresh out of school, very enthusiastic about intro to women's studies. And so the instructor had an assignment where they had to choose, of course, like work with the research topic. But first, they would have to prepare an annotated bibliography of two, if I'm remembering it correctly, two sources from the syllabus. And they had to choose three external sources, two of them which had to be scholarly, and one could be practitioner literature. That sits well with the research topic. So what they had to do was they after they had selected these sources, they had to prepare summary, or what we call annotation, of the sources. So essentially, it could be a book chapter. So if it's a book chapter, and if the student was writing an annotation of the book chapter, they had to mention what were the arguments that were important for their research. What were the arguments in in that book chapter that they were working with that was important for their research? What methodology was the author using? Why is that relevant for their research? Essentially summarizing the content of uh, the content of the book chapter or the article or whatever source that they were um, using or working with. I'm going to let you on in another secret, and that I absolutely swear by. Please do not please do not read all articles and all journals. Like, nobody has the time to write to read 50 journals when you're trying to work in a 2 week deadline to finish a 4,000 word research paper, right? So save yourself that trouble. The trick to do that, the trick to get through that is read the abstract very well, go through the methodology, and read the findings and conclusion. So that way you have a full idea of what the research is talking about. And trust me, that has helped me, that has worked for me, and that has also helped me land good grades. So again, when you are preparing annotations, it's not it's not mandatory that you have to read every line of a piece of work that you're working with. Of course, if it's of your interest, by all means, do that. If you think you can devote maybe 6 months to a project, by all means, do that. But if you're working within a limited time frame, it's absolutely okay to be selective in your reading strategy. It's also part of a strategy that you curate for yourself. And once you have done, and that actually, once if you are going through the intro, the methods, the findings, and the conclusion, you have a full idea of what the paper is talking about, and that helps informing your annotations. So once you have a summary of what the paper or book chapter is talking about, you already have a set of ideas that you can work with and that can feed to your research paper. So the assignment that I was talking about a while back was actually a two-part assignment where students had to prepare annotation of 3 to 4 sources, and they had to use the sources in actually developing a research paper. Now, something that I found useful in this exercise was when you were writing or preparing your annotations, you could already see a hypothesis building, right? And once you have your hypothesis, which is the hook of your paper, which binds the paper together. For example, if I'm saying that for uh, for Canada to support women in post-conflict context, they need to do well with socially progressive policies, and they need to kind of um, make sure that their foreign policy is in tandem with the policies of the nation where they are providing humanitarian assistance to. Now, I will look for sources based on these, um, based on this argument. Now, when I'm looking for sources, if this is my primary argument, once I look for sources, once I develop the annotation, I would see some changes in it. Either it supports my argument or it doesn't. Either way, it adds something to the literature, right? It adds, and also kind of, just remember that you do not, and nobody tells us this, and I find this really, really sad that you do not have to add new to the literature all the time. You can as well summarize the literature, you know, present the review of the existing practitioner, non-practitioner, scholarly literature, and you can publish that work. Those are called review articles, and that is valid work as well. That's a very cool and I would say less tedious way to get a publication if you do not have primary source to work with. An annotated bibliography works best for that. Can I have the next source, please? So the next slide. Oh, look at me already struggling with sources and slides. Now this is something very interesting. I have been living in a cocoon. I did not know that there were other styles of bibliography that exist. In my mind, it was like, oh, maybe annotated bibliography is just an extension of, of the citation style bibliography that I've been talking about. But turns out there are different kinds of bibliography that you can work with. Personally, I love working with. I'm sorry if there are background noise. I'm just in a place with a couple of people. Yeah, so if if you're working with, personally, I feel that I can work best with annotated bibliography because it helps me prepare my research paper. But there are other forms of bibliographies that you can use, which are selective bibliography. It's essentially you work with a significant topic and you work with a selective list of again, of sources that speaks to that topic. Subject bibliography is kind of sort of the same, but it focuses on sources which are related to a specific subject or theme. For example, if I am working on a topic which focuses on the impact of climate change on women's work or the future of work. If that is my theme, I will try to look for sources that that you know that speaks to that theme, or that is complementary to the theme. Now, ancestral bibliography is essentially a historical list of sources which is used in creating a document, which is often used in historical research. I'm not an historian, so I cannot speak to an ancestral bibliography. But if you are interested in pursuing historical research, by all means, go through, dig a bit deeper into ancestral bibliography. Enumerary of bibliography, again, it's a straightforward list of sources. It is usually organized in alphabetical order without any annotation or evaluation, much like a works cited or a reference section. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Make sure that your bibliography is complementary to the style of citation that you are following, or the requirement of your assignment or project that you're working on. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so basically, I think I have covered these things. It's kind of at this point would be regurgitating the same thing, but just to keep it really brief, before writing a research paper and after, of course, you've selected a topic, you should choose your sources. And when choosing sources, I would say, like, go all in and all out, be generous with your sources. So, suppose if you are working on a 4,000 word research paper, usually I'd say stick with, I don't know, like, for example, 30 sources, out of which you might not cite everything, but you will be able to kind of select or work with the top 20 or 25 sources that stands out. And that helps you really kind of figure out what sources actually speak to the work that you are pursuing, the kind of argument that you're trying to present in your work. And again, cite your sources, follow specifics. If you're following whatever style, whatever rules your boat, just try to follow those citation style and maintain the accuracy of it. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, it's writing an annotation. It's very dry, like I said, but important nonetheless. You have to provide a summary, explain why the work is relevant to your research. This is very important. You have to explain why you are using that particular source for your research. And again, like, you'll be the best judge of the quality of the scholarly source that you're meeting. And when I say quality, one thing that I definitely mean is do not cite um, articles that are published on predatory journals. But if it's an emerging scholar, that's great, because when it's an emerging scholar, it's all the more possible that they write in more accessible language than established academics. And I have no qualms in admitting that I struggle with understanding what Spivak is writing, what Chomsky is writing. They just go over my head because I don't understand the language. And that's not my fault, right? That's essentially the way the writer is not able to communicate their ideas. Because if you're using a lot of jargons, and this is a criteria you would see in a lot of journals in this day and age, like, they want clear, concise communication, and in plain language. You do not have to use jargons to make your research valid. So again, look for the quality of the the work that you are citing. And again, if it's not from an established academic, that is fine. Honestly, it's much more valuable to cite sources that you understand than citing sources just for the sake of citing somebody who's famous. The next is organize your annotated bibliography based on your arguments. So if there are an order that you're following, follow that order, establish that order, and work according to that. You also have to format your annotated bibliography. So when you are writing the summary, essentially at the beginning, you'll have to mention, you'll have to cite the source and then follow it with the summary of the work that you are citing, or that you are going to cite. Again, follow whatever style you feel comfortable with. Again, don't be like me. Proofread, 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 unless you are absolutely sure that there's nothing wrong, or there, not to say that there is anything wrong, but there are no typos in your paper, because it often happens, like, if you have seen something for a very long time, usually you tend to overlook the typos. So maybe if you have written a research paper, say for 1 week, come back to it after a week again, and then you'll see it with fresh eyes, and you'll be able to see more typos appear. So yeah, proofread and make sure that you have revised and tightened your argument, and your sources complement them or speak to them. And then again, cite your sources. Can I have the next slide, please? Again, regurgitating the same thing. Organize your sources. These are typically the most popular, I won't say the most popular, because The usual way to cite a source is using the author's last name, first name, the publication year, title of the book, and the publisher if it's a book, if it's a journal article, last name, first name, publication year, name of the article, the title of the article, the title of the journal, the volume number, issue number, page number, and DOI if it's present. And if it's website, as you can see, the author's last name, first name, publication year, title of the web page, that is, the title of the maybe the report or blog post that you're referencing, and the title of the website along with the URL. Yes, and collect information. First thing to write a research, prepare a bibliography when you are done writing a research paper is what I use. What the method that I use is instead of kind of like just keeping bibliography to the last, I usually prepare a similar document simultaneously when I'm writing my research paper, where if I'm writing or kind of engaging with a certain source, I include it in that document. And then once I'm done writing the research paper, I just copy paste it to the end of my research paper. Can I have the next slide, please? We're almost towards the end. I promise. You've made it this far. So, yeah, uh, arrange your entries. They should be in alphabetical order. Use indentions, usually hanging indent. And I cannot stress this enough. This is something that I did not absolutely know when I joined my doctoral thesis. This was not so important in my doctoral coursework. You would see that I'm repeating this thing a lot because this was a steep learning curve for me. And if you're applying, in universities, North America, cannot speak to Europe or any other places, but if you're applying to North America, this is very important. They like my supervisor, one of my supervisors, they are very particular about the indent, the way you're formatting your paper. So be mindful about the things that you need to just check with your supervisor or just check with the person that you're directly working with about their expectations of styling or formatting your paper. Always italicize the titles. Oh my god, I'm just like sometimes I would eat the words up. So you get what I mean. Check the formatting. Again, very important. Capitalization, the commas, the space. Double check your entries for accuracy, spelling, proper formatting. You all know, the drill. So I don't think I need to add to that at this point. This is just the same information that I'm talking about. Include URLs, check for missing information, because sometimes, suppose if you're using on a reference website, they would often, perhaps, suppose if you're using a certain style, they would miss out on the author's first name or last name. And if you are working on a tight schedule, you might just kind of, just see that, you might just kind of copy and paste it as is. Not to say there's nothing wrong with using referencing website. I do that myself. But when you are done copy pasting those, and it makes our lives easy. We don't have all the time to kind of sit and reference and write full bibliography. They used to do that in the 1980s, but now we have technology, so better make use of that. But when you are doing that, make sure that you have all the information in place and double check for accuracy. Like I said, proofread. Can I have the next slide, please? Winding off. I swear, this we are almost at the end. You got this. I got this too. Writing a good bibliography is critical to your research paper, but it is also crucial that you give proper credit to the source that you are using, so much as to kind of thinking about a particular idea. So, for example, if there's an argument, and this is something that my supervisor told me very early on during my comprehensive exams, that even if you are drawing from somebody's ideas, even if you're not directly citing them in your work, you need to credit them. So for example, if I'm just going to go all out here. So I don't use Einstein's theory of relativity, but that's what's coming to mind. Suppose if I'm working with Einstein's theory of relativity and developing my own theory of relativity. I doubt I'll ever be able to accomplish that. But yeah, so in that case, I will have to cite the original creator of the idea, the original source, that this is where I am drawing my ideas from. This is the source that helps me put forward my novel theory. Not to say that any one of us have to prepare a novel theory. There's already a lot of it. So if you're presenting a new theory, all the more power to you. If you're not, that's also fine. So make sure that you are also crediting the sources that you are consulting and not citing. Again, same information, um, complete, you know, just make sure that you have complete information and no missing information, including, and something that we miss out on is publication page. That I do. I would, whenever I'm on a rush, I would sometimes miss on including publication pages. So make sure that you are including everything. The last one, I promise. Can I have the next slide? Oh no, this is not the last one. I'm sorry. Yeah, so just to keep it very short, check for consistency. Again, pay attention to the details, capitalization, italicizing, spacing. Check for accuracy. By this time, you must be bored by it. Secondary sources. If now this is important. If you are citing a source that is within another source, for example, um, within Einstein's theory of relativity, there's Newton's theory. I don't know if they necessarily correlate. I've never been very good in science, but just for your understanding. So if I'm working with Newton's idea, I will also make sure to to add that in my research. So that becomes a secondary source. So make sure that you're acknowledging both the authors that you are, kind of deriving or preparing your ideas from. This is the last one. I promise. I remembered. Can I go to the last slide, please? Finally, see, like I said, it's the last slide. So again, just to kind of summarize plagiarism, make sure that you're not plagiarizing because it is an academic offense. And if you're caught plagiarizing knowingly, unknowingly, it does not look very well in like on your CV, and of course around your circle, because then the idea is that you are essentially working with somebody else's idea without crediting the author. Use reference management tools. They are absolute best. But again, please do understand that those are machines and machines can only do so much, albeit they can make our lives very easy. Make sure that once you have, and this comes from experience, once you have used a reference management tool and once you have generated the citation, make sure that you are checking it for accuracy, for all the comma, italics, capitalization, spacing, whatever that you need to check at par with the citation style that you're using. And review the guidelines where you are sending your work to. It could be a book project, it could be a journal, it could be an assignment that you're submitting to your professor. Make sure that you have the guidelines right in front of you when you are preparing your paper. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, we are at the end of our discussion. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. I really do appreciate it. Ooh,
I think there are questions, and someone is raising their hand.
Should I go?
yeah, sure.
Thank you, Deeplina, for the wonderful presentation. I have a few questions. Can you repeat what was subject bibliography? I missed it when you were going through the slides. The second question I want to
Yeah.
ask you, I let me give all my questions and then you can go one by one. Yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
second question I want to ask you about is you were in one slide you gave wrote about summary relevance and quality of each annotated bibliography. So can you
Right.
show us some example that how it is done? Because I have never come across those kind of articles in which they are justifying why they are using the particular source. Uh, and what I was going to, yeah. Oh, yeah. One more thing I'm going to ask you is that when you are using plagiarism softwares, which you have in your university or somewhere else, can they even find out idea plagiarism? If someone has copied some idea from any paper and they have used their completely entire their own words, and they have not cited him properly, so can it be detected by a plagiarism software? No, one else, yeah. And one more thing, you were talking about interviews. A lot of interviews in which they are asking about questions about APA style, Chicago style. So do you try to remember all the rules of the styles? Because I was using a reference management software till now, like Zotero and Microsoft Word kind inbuilt software. So I was not remembering any of the rules. I was just using them, putting all the information, and they were doing the work for me. So this is something new that you can be asked about these rules in an interview. So yeah, that's all I guess.
Um, Shantan, those are
Mhm.
wonderful list of questions, but I do want to clarify one thing. When I talked about interview, I was just drawing, I was just trying to give an example. I do not think that they ask you about citation styles in interview. If they do, please run away from that interview because that
Mhm.
does not check the credibility. That does not necessarily check your credibility as a researcher, because nobody, like, I don't think that I remember all the rules of citation. I use a reference management tool myself, but that was just, to give an example. Suppose if you're, for example, if you're attending a formal interview somewhere, they ask you a set of questions, right? So you have to kind of get answers to those questions absolutely right so that you get that job. Similarly, for your research paper, if you are preparing a research paper, you have to ensure that your citations are correct and accurate. That's what I meant. Does that make it clear?
Yes, yes. I think it's clear.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry, but you will have to repeat your question because I have the memory of a goldfish. So yeah,
I
could
asked you
you,
about the subject bibliography. The first question was
right?
what is it? The
Yeah,
second question was about plagiarism softwares. The third
yeah,
question was about summary, relevance, and quality. In one slide, you have written that you need to justify summary,
yeah,
relevance, and quality of annotated bibliography.
right.
Uh, and
Um,
yeah, I will just add one more question. What is hanging intent? Because I was hearing this word for the first time. I've heard about left
right.
indent, right indent, and all those things, but hanging intent.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, so all right. Those are again a list of questions that I will have to get to one by one. About writing annotations, I can possibly send you a paper that I wrote, or I could, you and I could meet one on one, and I can show you how to kind of curate that list. Essentially, um, when you are preparing an annotation, the idea is that you will be able to explain why that source is important for your research. That justification should have to come from you, because if I am evaluating your research paper, or if I'm reviewing your research paper more so, you need to tell me, like, okay, this, so, and you are the one who knows your topic inside out. Nobody knows it better than you. So it's your job to tell me, like, hey, if I am using this source, this is correct. These are the information that is presented there. Accuracy, if you're reading the article and if you are using certain ideas from that article, that could be a journal article, that could be any source, right? You already know what is there. So you are already validating the accuracy. As for the quality, again, like I said, that make sure that you, as long as you're not using articles that are easily available on, like, I'm sure, like, by this time all of us know, like, what predatory websites and
Hmm.
journals look like, so you will be able to decide on the quality. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. And plagiarism checkers are usually very advanced. And yes, I mean, if anything, they sometimes would catch on the name of the authors that you're using, even though you have cited them. So I would say, just to be and sometimes, when you're working with seasoned academics, even if plagiarism checker cannot catch it, they would be able to catch, because they have,
Mm,
they are experts on specific topic that you're working on, or they're reviewing, because they're experts, they're reviewing your work, so they would know that you have used somebody's ideas and not cited it properly. So don't think about the plagiarism checker, but think about your integrity as a researcher, because as an early career researcher, and even
mm,
as an ethical researcher, you would probably want to credit the source that you
mm,
are using. And sorry, you have subject
mm.
bibliography.
Subject, yeah.
Subject bibliography, yeah. So subject bibliography is essentially, if you're
Mm,
working on a specific subject or theme. For example, if I am working on the impact of climate change on women's migration in, for example, sub-Saharan Africa. So that is a particular theme that I'm working on, right? So I will look for sources that speaks to those things. So essentially, I'll go to Google Scholar or JSTOR or PubMed, and I will type in the keywords, which are like women's migration, climate change, sub-Saharan Africa. And the articles that come up, or the sources that come up, will directly speak to the theme or the subject that I'm working on and indent. It's difficult to explain. I'll have to show you, but yeah, feel free to shoot me a text, and I can show you how a
yeah, yeah.
handling indent looks like.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Is there any other question, Shubhita?
Yes, actually, I had a similar question or query. Uh, I also need to, I don't know anything about annotated bibliography. So, if you can give an example or show us an example of that.
So, okay, just bear with me. I might have to hold up. Just bear with me. I'm looking for the
Yeah,
document
absolutely.
that I prepared. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
No? Can you all see my screen? Okay.
Yes, you can.
So do you see this? So this is part of my comprehensive examination draft that I prepared, and it was a course syllabus that I had to prepare. So basically, was the background. Da, da, da. Okay, so let me see. For example, you know, this is how an annotated bibliography looks like. Basically, this is the citation that I was using. I was using APA citation. Uh, and then this was my annotation. As you can see, this is Alison Palmer's essay published in 1998. And this was my annotation. It was fairly long, and it depends on, your project guidelines. Somebody would want maybe annotations for 4 to 5 with 4 to 5 lines. But since I was preparing it for my comprehensive exam, it was longer. But if you're working on your independent research project, make sure to kind of curate your own guidelines. If you want to work with bigger annotations, go for it. If you want to work with shorter annotation but also capture the relevant themes, arguments, that's also fine.
I'm sorry,
So
but
yeah,
I can't see the screen moving, or I can't see anything on the screen. I mean, it's showing. Is it my internet problem, or
No, I
everyone
can't
is
too.
facing?
you can't.
Yeah.
Okay,
Even
let
I
me.
can't too.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I thought it was
Oh,
my problem, so I just kept quiet. I don't know.
no, no, that's fine. Thank you for. Okay, maybe what I can do is I can just send it to Atendrio and maybe they can share it. Okay, hold on, hold that thought. Give me a second. Okay, I'm just gonna stop share and Atendrio, I'm going to mail you this document. And thank you for pointing that out. I would request please do not cite it or use it anywhere because it's part of my course outline. But very happy to show you all. Mm, Bear with me, my technical skills are worst at best. Alrighty, where did it go? Um, Damn. Okay, got it. There. Atendrio, I did send it to your Gmail if you are able to download it and share it with the group. Sure, more than happy to share the slides. Sorry, Shubhacha, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to know if there is some, I mean, some technology, I mean, some website to help us in referencing and citation, which is authentic. I mean, which you can
Yeah,
use.
yeah, there are a couple. Like Shanton mentioned, there's Zotero, there's Mendeley. These are the two which are popularly used among students. So you could definitely try those. So can
Thank you.
everybody see the screen now?
Yeah, now it's
Yes,
visible.
now I can.
Okay, okay. Authentic, I would like you to kind of just move ahead, just go up with the document a bit, and you would see that there's a citation with Palmer. Thank you everyone for hanging in there. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, I think yeah, no, okay. Yeah, this is fine. You can stop here. Yeah. So if you can see, this article is by Gitanjali Ganguly, and my just to give you a brief context about it, the course syllabus was on gender, genocide, and transitional justice. So this particular section was to give a conceptual idea and understanding to students about how sexual violence is often used as a strategy in genocide. And I was using Gitanjali Ganguly's article, which was Engendering Genocide, Gender Conflict and Violence. As you can see, it appeared in Women's Studies International Forum. And when you're italicizing, make sure that you are using italics for the sources where the article or the source that you're citing appeared. So if it's a book, use italics for the books. I'm not going to say italicize because it's just I don't know, it's just weird for me to pronounce it. And if it's a journal, make sure that you're using italics for the journal. Could you go down a bit? Sorry, go up. Can you hear me? Perfect. Yeah. So usually an annotation looks like this. Here, what I have essentially done is kind of summarized think of it like a literature review, but a literature review where not so much like a literature review, but the structure of a literature review, where you are kind of saying that, okay, this is the author's central argument, this is the methodology that they are using, And these are the arguments that speak to my research question. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Uh, so,
Okay.
uh, so the difference between literature review and this is kind of, in
Mm-hmm.
literature review we do not go in details about what the argument is. We just try to show the lacuna or what we find from that. But in here we have to go in detail and summarize the whole argument, right?
Yes, which is precisely it. But just to kind of add on to that, when you are using a literature review is not, does not necessarily help in pointing to something that is missing in the literature, but it also helps for you to understand what is there in the literature, like what work has been done so far. And this is called a knowledge synthesis, where you are actually using the method of a literature review to synthesize all the work that, or most of the work, in preparing a comprehensive list of the work that has been done on a particular topic. So if you want to kind of, again, like I mentioned, if you do not have a particular topic in mind, or even if you have a particular topic, but you do not have specific primary sources, suppose you do not have primary data to work with, you can very well work with secondary data. You can publish a literature review as a knowledge synthesis. So I don't know, like maybe if there is interest, and if the organizers think that it would be worthwhile, I'm more than happy to talk about knowledge synthesis, and how to prepare a knowledge synthesis, and how to write reports and non-academic articles that also count as publication.
Thank you
I
so
think,
much. uh,
yeah,
uh,
you're very
okay,
welcome.
will it be possible for you to share your email ID with us so that if we have some
Sure,
further
sure.
question we can. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
I'm more than happy to share my email ID. And I'm happy to share the slides as well. Um, Atandrio, if you can share it with the group, you already have the slides, that would be amazing. Well, thank you for being a wonderful audience and for all your brilliant questions. I really enjoyed this session, and being able to talk with all of you, and able to kind of, talk about whatever strategies that I use. And again, one thing that I cannot emphasize enough is there's no correct way to do academia, no matter what people would have you believe. If your work is valid, even if it's a literature review, so or even if it's a policy brief, because what we are seeing now is there's a lot of space, appreciation, and need for articles and for knowledge synthesis report and work which are not huge, which are short, which are concise, which can communicate essential, kind of arguments, complex ideas in a simple way. So if you, and please remember that English is your second language. It's like, it's fine if you, like, it's, I think it's really important to deconstruct the idea that people who are located in the global south, scholars in the global south, we produce knowledge which are as relevant, as valuable as our global north counterparts. So do not think that your thoughts, your knowledge, your ideas are not valid. Speaking English is just a criteria. Writing in good English is just a criteria. There are ways that there are ways to um, software is available that can help you refine your English. And if anybody ever made you believe, because I was made to believe that my writing skills were very poor and horrible, although my writing has, like, I recently published, um, I have published in several websites and public facing websites. I regularly disseminate knowledge, and recently also one of my articles also got accepted in one of the very, very popular Canadian foreign policy journals. I was also able to present my research to Canada's High Commissioner to Bangladesh. So if I could do this, coming from Global South, you all can too. So if anybody ever makes you believe that you are not worthy of sending your article to that journal, which is kind of published by a reputed university, make sure you send that, because if they're not publishing quality work, that's on them. That's not on you. We, as scholars, as academics, as practitioners in the Global South, we bring a ton of lived experience. We bring a ton of better understanding of our cultural and social context than people in the Global North who just come in and try to do research in our region. So yeah, do not beat yourself down. Know that you're doing important work. Your work is important, and yeah. And if academia, is not your calling, it's fine too. You can also publish in public-facing websites, and that's valid form of publication.
Thank you so much, Deeplina. On behalf of JIR, Jadavpur University, and the school, I extend the heartfelt gratitude, and I hope everybody has learned a lot today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. It was lovely having you. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for attending the talk. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your evening. Bye. And feel
Thank
free
you,
to
ma'am.
get in
Thank
touch
you,
if you
ma'am.
want to.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
Didi.
you.